Her literature and drama teacher impregnated her. The cost of silence and the fight for justice. Yoon Mi-young had always been the kind of girl who made teachers smile and students whisper. At Daehan Girls College, one of Korean's most prestigious schools, her name carried weight. She wasn't rich, she wasn't loud, and she certainly wasn't connected. But she was brilliant. Her scholarship had been announced at the school assembly 2 years ago. The Yoon Mi-young miracle, they called it. The girl from the dusty neighborhood of Nowongu, Seoul, who scored the highest national exam mark and landed in a school where half the students were dropped off in tinted SUVs. For Mi-young, education wasn't just a dream. It was her way out. Her mother, Mrs. Kim Young-suk, sold vegetables by the roadside, and her father, once a mechanic, had been bedridden for years. Every night, Mi-young studied under a flickering bulb powered by a borrowed generator. So when she got to Daehan Girls College, she promised herself, no distractions, no failure, no scandal. But life, as it turned out, didn't care much for promises. Mr. Park Jun-suk was one of those teachers parents trusted blindly. He was young, barely 33, handsome, eloquent, and with a calm authority that made students sit up straight. He taught literature and drama, but what he really taught was charm. He had this way of talking that made you feel seen, like your words actually mattered. He would quote Shakespeare 1 minute, and the next talk about Afrobeats and the art of rebellion. To most students he was cool. To Mi-young at first he was just another teacher. Until he noticed her. One Friday after class he stopped her as she packed her books. "Mi-young, right?" he said with that soft smile. "I've read your essay, The Burden of Silence. You wrote like someone twice your age. Who taught you to think like that?" Mi-young smiled shyly. I just write how I feel, sir." He chuckled. "Don't ever lose that. That's your gift." That day he gave her his number. "In case you ever need guidance," he said. "I mentor a few bright students. Helps me sleep better at night knowing I'm doing something useful." It sounded harmless. It wasn't. It began innocently. A message here, a compliment there. "You're the best student I've ever taught. Your mind is rare. Don't let anyone dim it." Yoon Mi-young blushed at his praise. For someone who'd grown up being invisible, it felt good to be noticed. He began offering extra lessons after school. "Special training for your writing competition," he called it. "Other teachers won't go this far for you," he'd say. "You're lucky I see your potential." And Mi-young, naive and grateful, believed him. At first, their conversations were strictly academic. But slowly, subtly they shifted. "Do you have a boyfriend?" he asked one day, smiling. "No, sir." "Good. Focus on your goals. Boys your age will only distract you. Besides..." He paused. "You're too mature for them." She laughed awkwardly, not sure how to respond. The next week, he started calling her my star pupil. Then my favorite. Then just my Mi-young. It was during exam week. Yoon Mi-young had just gotten a disappointing score. Her first in years. She was on the verge of tears when he approached her after class. "Hey," he said softly, closing the door behind them. "Don't beat yourself up. Even the best fail sometimes." She nodded, her eyes wet. "Come here," he said. "You're too tense." When she didn't move, he stepped closer and placed his hand on her shoulder. A gentle, lingering touch. She froze. Then he smiled and said, "Relax, I see you like my little sister." The words soothed her fear for a moment. But his hand stayed longer than it should. That night she couldn't sleep. Something about it didn't feel right. Yet she told herself, he didn't mean anything. He's just being kind. Weeks passed. His messages became more frequent and more personal. "You looked beautiful today in class. I missed talking to you." When she stopped replying, he became colder in class. Once he even embarrassed her publicly. "Mi-young, you're losing focus," he said loudly. "What happened to my brilliant girl?" After class, he called her into his office. "Do you want to lose your scholarship?" he asked calmly. "No, sir." "Then don't ignore me." The words struck like lightning. He knew exactly where to hit. From that day, fear became her silent companion. Then comes one Friday evening. The rain tapped softly on the windows of his office. Yoon Mi-young had stayed behind for extra lessons. When she stood up to leave, he blocked the door gently. "You've worked hard," he said. "You deserve a little praise." Before she could speak, His hand brushed her cheek. She froze. Sir. Sure, he whispered. You're beautiful when you're serious. Her mind screamed, but her voice didn't. When she pulled away, he laughed softly. Don't act like a child, Myung. I just care about you. That night, she cried silently on her bed. Her heart was heavy with shame. Yet she couldn't tell anyone. Who would believe her? He was the beloved teacher. She was the poor scholarship girl. Weeks turned into months. He became bolder, more possessive. He would call her to his office during breaks, threaten to cancel her essay entries if she didn't show up. You think anyone will believe you? He whispered one afternoon. You're nothing without me. Myung's grades began to drop. Her laughter disappeared. Her mother noticed the change when she came back on holidays. Myung, you're not smiling these days, her mother said one night while packing vegetables, her hands moving deftly but her eyes lingering on her daughter. Yoon Myung forced a small smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. I'm just tired, Mama, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother paused, brow furrowed, sensing that something was wrong. Tired, You know you can tell me anything, right? Nothing is too big or too small. Yoon Myung looked away, focusing on the cracks in the wall instead of her mother's concerned gaze. She shook her head faintly. I'll be fine, Mama. Really? But inside she was falling apart. Every day felt heavier than the last, and the burden of silence was suffocating. The thought of sharing the truth, of what was happening with Mr. Park Jun-suk, made her chest tighten. Who would believe her? Who could help her? After a brief school holiday spent at home, Yoon Mi-young returned to Daehan Girls' College with a heavy heart. Those weeks with her parents had been a rare sanctuary. Mornings helping her mother at the vegetable stall, evenings listening to her father hum softly in the living room, nights spent under the dim glow of the generator, studying at her own pace, feeling safe for the first time in months. But reality waited for her at school. The polished floors, the whispering corridors, the glances from students and teachers alike. Nothing had changed. In a school like Daehan Girls' College, gossip spread faster than exams. It started small. Why does Mr. Park Jun-suk always keep Yoon Mi-young back after class? Then whispers turned to laughter. Laughter turned to judgment. She's his pet. She must be doing something for those grades. When Jie, a jealous classmate, saw her leaving his office late one evening, she snapped a photo. By Monday morning, the picture was all over social media. Mi-young's name was dragged through the mud. The principal Lee called her in, demanding an explanation. She couldn't speak. How could she? If she told the truth, no one would believe her. If she lied, the guilt would consume her. She chose silence. It was raining that Friday. Yoon Mi-young had decided to avoid Mr. Park Jun-suk entirely. But halfway through lunch, a message appeared on her phone. Mr. Park Jun-suk, come to my office. Urgent. It's about your essay submission. Her stomach tightened. She didn't want to go, but fear pushed her forward. When she entered, he locked the door behind her. Sit, he said. His voice, usually warm, was now cold, commanding. She stayed standing. What do you want to discuss? He stepped closer, his gaze sharp. You've changed. You act like I'm the villain here. Do you know how much I've done for you? I never asked you to, she whispered. He reached out, and before she could react, he forced himself and have his way with again, ignoring her protests. Yoon Mi-young froze, panic coursing through her body, every instinct screaming to escape. He advanced, cornering her near his desk. Yoon Mi-young felt trapped, panic clawing at her chest. He reached for her hand, then grabbed her shoulder, forcing her to remain still. She tried to push away, but he held her with the authority only a teacher in his position could wield. Don't make me the enemy, he said, voice trembling with anger. You think anyone will believe you? They already think you're. Mia's fear erupted. Summoning every ounce of strength, she shoved him aside and bolted out into the rain. Her lungs burned as she ran, her shoes splashing through muddy water, thunder echoing above. She didn't stop until she reached the small bridge near her dormitory. There, under the downpour, she collapsed, trembling uncontrollably, sobbing until her voice was gone. The world felt impossibly heavy. And in that storm she realized she had just survived another attempt to take everything from her. Morning came with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. Yoon Mi-young stood before the mirror, staring at a reflection she could barely recognize. The girl looking back at her had shadows beneath her eyes, lips pale and trembling. She looked tired, haunted, small. Somewhere deep inside something stirred, anger perhaps. Or maybe courage, fighting to be heard beneath the storm of fear and shame. Fear, anger, and guilt tore through her in relentless waves. She felt trapped inside a cage made of silence, the walls closing in a little more each day. She couldn't tell anyone. Not her teachers, not even her cousin, Yoon Ji-soo, her cousin, who kept asking with soft concern, "Yooni, are you okay?" every day after class. But how could she answer that? Who could she trust? Who would believe her? The gossip in school had only grown louder. Whispers turned to stares. Stares turned to cruel laughter. Her grades slipped again, and with each passing day the burden of secrecy grew heavier. A stone she carried alone, pressing harder and harder against her chest. Weeks blurred together until the world became a haze of anxiety and sleepless nights. Mi-young's body began to betray her. Food made her sick, mornings became unbearable, and her uniform hung differently on her frame. She told herself it was stress, maybe just exhaustion, but deep down she already knew. Then came the missed period. 1 week. Then 2. The truth hit her like a lightning strike. Could it be that she was pregnant? She sat frozen on the edge of her narrow dorm bed, her breath shallow, her hands trembling as she counted the days again and again, praying the numbers would somehow change. But they didn't. Her fingers clutched her stomach, as though the simple touch could erase what was happening inside her. "No, no, please," she whispered, voice cracking under the weight of her terror. Tears spilled freely, her body shaking as dread coiled around her like a living thing. Every memory of Mr. Park Jun-suk returned. His words, his threats, that cold smirk, and the realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bad dream she could wake from. One morning, after weeks of fear and sleepless nights, Yoon Mi-young finally decided she couldn't carry the burden alone. She took a deep breath and went to meet Ms. Choi Do-in, the school counselor. A kind woman known for listening without judgment. "Miss Choi Do-in," Yoon Mi-young began, her voice trembling. I need help." Miss Choi Do-in gestured for her to sit and gave her a reassuring smile. "Take your time, Mi-young. Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." For the next hour, Yoon Mi-young poured out everything. The messages, the threats, the manipulation, and the moments he had cornered her in his office. She handed over her phone, her notes, and printed copies of the incriminating messages. Miss Choi Do-in listened carefully, nodding, then spoke gently but firmly. "Mi-young, what you've experienced is not your fault. We're going to collect this evidence properly, document everything, and make sure the Principal Lee takes action. You're not alone in this." With the counselor's guidance, Yoon Mi-young organized her proof. Timestamps, messages, and a detailed account of each encounter. She felt a small spark of courage she hadn't felt in months. Finally, she walked to the Principal Lee's office, clutching the folder like a lifeline. "I need to report something," she said, her voice quivering but resolute. The Principal Lee's brow furrowed. "Mr. Park Jun-suk? That's a serious allegation, young lady." Yoon Mi-young nodded, placing the phone and folder on his desk. "I have proof, and I need it taken seriously." He scrolled through the messages, his face growing pale as he read. "We'll investigate immediately," he said. "Thank you for speaking up, Mi-young." Miss Choi Do-in stayed by her side, offering quiet support as the process began. For the first time in months, Yoon Mi-young felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that the truth might finally set her free. The news spread like wildfire. Teacher accused of misconduct. Scholarship student exposes abuse in elite school. Parents were divided. Some praised her courage. Others whispered that she wanted attention. Reporters camped outside the school gate. Mr. Park Jun-suk was suspended, then arrested pending trial. But the emotional toll was immense. Yoon Mi-young faced mockery, isolation, even threats. Some classmates avoided her. Others taunted her. "See what happens when you try to be hero." She cried often but never in public. Because deep down she knew. Her silence had protected him once. Her voice would destroy him now. The next morning, Yoon Mi-young arrived at school assembly, heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to expect. But she was told in the assembly that she should report to the Principal Lee office after the morning assemble. Inside the Principal Lee's office, Mr. Park Jun-suk sat stiffly, his face carefully neutral. Across from him, Mia's parents had been summoned. Her mother's eyes were fierce, her hands clenched into fists. Her father stood silently though weak, but his jaw was tight with barely restrained anger. Mr. Park Jun-suk, the Principal Lee began, voice steady. You are hereby summoned to explain your conduct regarding Yoon Mi-young. Mr. Park Jun-suk shifted in his seat. This is unnecessary. I have done nothing wrong. The Principal Lee's gaze didn't waver. There are serious allegations of abuse and misconduct. We have spoken with the student, and evidence has been collected. Mia's mother leaned forward, voice sharp with resolve. If you have hurt my daughter, I swear, I will use everything at my disposal to take you to court. You will pay for what you've done. The Principal Lee nodded firmly. Mrs. Kim Young-suk, the school stands with you. We will provide full support throughout this process, and ensure that your daughter is protected. No one should suffer alone, and financial constraints will not prevent justice. Mr. Park Jun-suk's expression faltered for the first time. He opened his mouth but no words came. The power he had wielded over Yoon Mi-young for months, the fear, the manipulation, had begun to crumble under the united front of truth, courage, and support. Mia's mother pressed her hand into her daughter's. We'll get justice, Mi-young. You won't be alone anymore. For the first time in months, Yoon Mi-young felt a tiny spark of hope. The courtroom smelled of fear and truth. Yoon Mi-young stood in front of strangers, recounting her trauma. Her voice shook but her words were clear. Mr. Park Jun-suk sat across the room, expressionless, his hands clenched on the table. His lawyer tried to undermine her. She's seeking attention, he argued. No physical evidence, only claims. Mi-young's lawyer, calm and composed, responded with confidence. She presented the audio messages, playing them aloud for everyone to hear. You know you're special to me, Mi-young. Don't ignore me again or you'll regret it. Then, with deliberate gravity, she placed the medical evidence on the table, the test results confirming Mi-young's pregnancy, alongside the DNA report carried out at the hospital and approved by the court. The evidence left no room for doubt. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Whispers died down and even Mr. Park Jun-suk's lawyer paused, unable to challenge the irrefutable proof. Weeks later, when the judge finally spoke, his voice echoed through the room. Mr. Park Jun-suk, you are hereby found guilty of abuse of authority and misconduct. Yoon Mi-young didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She simply breathed deeply, finally, freely. For the first time, the weight on her chest lifted. She had survived. She had spoken. And justice had been served. After the verdict, Yoon Mi-young withdrew from Daehan Girls' College. Too many memories lingered in those halls. She spent months healing, therapy, writing, praying. Her story went viral, inspiring campaigns against abuse in schools. People called her brave, but she didn't feel brave. She felt human. Broken, then mended piece by piece. One evening, as she sat outside watching the sunset, a letter arrived. Dear Ms. Yoon Mi-young, we are pleased to inform you that you have been awarded the Global Youth Writing Fellowship in London for your essay, The Cost of Silence. Yoon Mi-young read it again and again, tears streaming down her face. The same essay that had been her way to survive had now become her ticket to freedom. Then there was another letter, this one outlining an extraordinary offer. The fellowship committee wanted to support her fully, including her pregnancy, as she pursued her dreams. They offered housing, financial assistance, and mentorship, assuring her that she could focus on her writing and her child without worry. For the first time in months, Yoon Mi-young allowed herself to hope. She could continue to dream. She could nurture her child. She could reclaim her life. The world had not only recognized her courage, it had extended a hand to help her rise. And she was ready to take it. The day she left Korean, she stood outside her old school one last time. The bell rang in the distance, sharp, familiar, haunting. For years that bell had meant fear. The sound that followed his voice, his presence, his threats. But now it was just a sound, nothing more. She smiled faintly. When the bell stopped ringing, she whispered, I started living. Months later in London, Yoon Mi-young stood before a room full of students at a youth conference. Her voice was calm, powerful, and free. I once thought silence was safety, she said. But silence only protects the oppressor. Speaking up saved me, and it can save others too. As the crowd applauded, Yoon Mi-young looked up. Not in pride but in peace. Because sometimes surviving isn't just about living through pain. It's about turning that pain into purpose. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe.